Hi, everyone. Thank you all for joining us today. Um, my name is Shira Adams, and I'm one of the youth organizers, a part of the youth justice team at Freedom Inc. My main role is to support the Black girls with direct services and also holding space and programming for the Black girls. Today, we're going to be having a panel about the current events that has been going on against young people in Madison today. I mean, in Madison altogether in the past week or so. And so we're just here with some um, experts to talk about how we can support the young folks better. We have a statement that we released last week, and I'm going to pass it to Milka to read that statement.
Thanks for the introduction, Shira. My name is Milka Rimmer. I work alongside Shira doing programming for Black girls in our Youth Justice Department, and I will be sharing the statement that we released last week. Dear freedom fighters, we are deeply saddened by the tragic shooting and loss of Kaisha Miller, a young teen who was killed this past Tuesday. Our hearts go out to her family and loved ones during this incredibly difficult time, as well as the other young people who are injured. Losing another Black girl will inevitably have a profound impact on the community, particularly on other young people. It serves as a painful reminder of the systemic inequalities and injustices that persist. The loss of Kaisha not only creates a void in the lives of her loved ones, but also leaves a lasting impact on the collective consciousness of our community. In the face of such devastating events, it is crucial that we reflect on how we can best serve and support our young people. It is clear that what our children need now more than ever is more support and resources, not more police and criminalization. We believe in the power of radical direct services that address the root causes of violence and provide young people with the tools and opportunities to thrive. We must demand an investment in programs and services that uplift the leadership, wellness, and creativity of our youth. Transformative justice and conflict resolution should be at the forefront of our approach to addressing harm with young people. We need to prioritize community-based solutions that empower young people rather than relying on police. It is essential that we shift our focus towards healing and prevention rather than more state violence. The over-reliance on police perpetuates an endless cycle of violence and harm, particularly towards Black young people. More police presence in schools and communities will not serve the underlying issues that lead to incidents like this, and in fact will only result in more violence. We firmly believe that the solution to ending violence lies in a comprehensive strategy that addresses root causes, such as white supremacy, patriarchy, state-sanctioned violence and poverty, and limited access to mental health resources. We stand committed to providing the necessary resources and services to ensure the well-being of our youth. We all have a collective responsibility to create a safer and more nurturing environment for our young people to thrive. We urge our community leaders, policymakers, and stakeholders to join us in advocating for a comprehensive and holistic approach to addressing harm, one that prioritizes the well-being and future of our young people, not more police and not more cages. Let us work together towards a future where our children can grow up in a world free from violence and full of healthy opportunities. In this time of profound grief and loss, let us remember Kaisha Miller and honor her memory by working towards a society that values and invests in the well-being of all of our youth. Peace, love, and power.
Thank you, Milka. Okay, so next we're going to pass it along to the panelists um, to introduce themselves, so their name, their pronouns, their organization, and their main roles. So I'm going to start with Adriana. AG, you're on mute.
My bad. Okay. Hi, I'm Adriana. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I'm a youth leader for Freedom Inc. I've been working to help get cops out of school, but also to make a change in our school systems now that we've got cops out of school.
Thank you. And then I'll pass it to Sadia.
Hi, thanks, Shira. I'm Sadia Durant, she, her pronouns. I'm based in Philadelphia. I'm a senior campaign strategist with the Advancement Project and happy to be here.
Thank you, Sadia. Sheldon.
Grand evening, everybody. My name is Shelton Evans. I am he, him. That's my pronouns. I work with Natural Circles of Support, which is a nonprofit that has an approach during the school day for intentionally Black kids, but we accept kids of color because they all experience some of the same traumas. But my role as a seed facilitator is I plant seeds in youth by way of affinity groups which means I get the kids for 45 minutes, sometimes to a day, and I give them a safe and brave space to be themselves, to learn about who they are, to support each other, and collectively just be celebrated. Thank you.
Thank you. Joyce?
Hi, everybody. My name is Joyce Hall. My pronouns is she, her, hers. I'm a gender justice advocate or coordinator at Freedom Inc., where I work with women, girls, and LGBT community, folks who experience violence.
Thank you all for introducing yourself. So we're going to jump into the questions. This first question is going to be for Adriana and Sadia. Adriana, I'm going to have you answer first. So the question is, what are the root causes of harm between young people in our school and communities?
The root causes to harm to youth in our schools and in our communities, to me, would be the police. There's always certain things, from housing to people going through things outside of school, and then when it gets brought to school, it also causes harm for the students as well, like seeing them throughout the school, or them harmfully being accused of things, and then the police coming up to the school. They always got ways around bringing the police around school.
Thank you, AG. Sadia?
Thanks, Shira. I think that's a really good question. What are the root causes of harm amongst young people in schools? I mean, I think similar to what was just shared, I think the concept of like organized abandonment by structures and by systems, that's a concept that Ruth Wilson Gilmore talks. Conversations around abolition and looking at the way that a lot of our institutions in society, everything from policing to schools to how folks have access to housing, to food, to healthcare. I think a lot of young people see and have seen generationally structures intentionally abandoning funding what actually keeps people materially safe and taken care of. And we see that abandonment for putting the funding and that putting a lot of that investment towards policing, towards criminalization, towards surveillance, and just towards, treating young people as if they're not meant to be young and beautiful and learning in their school environments, and as if those environments aren't meant to be sanctuaries, right, where they can feel cared for and protected. I think in a lot of the work that we do at AP, and looking at the kinds of conditions that young people deal with in schools, there's always a question of why are young people fighting or bullying or dealing with interpersonal conflict? And I think one thing to consider is that what we see in schools or young people dealing with is a microcosm of like the larger society that we're dealing with. We see state violence and sort of hard on crime narratives and attitudes about how we're supposed to treat and deal with people. We don't see often loving, nurturing, transformative environments where people aren't disposed of, right? We don't see the kind of societies or institutions funding what people actually need. We see police, we see militarized weapons in schools, we see bills and policies that will increase police, but in a school building where there isn't a library open, or where there aren't counselors, or where there isn't even food provided, right? Even looking at like the issue recently around like air quality, folks having to fight just to make sure that folks can literally breathe in and around their environments. So I think one thing to think of this question is like, I think within abolition, naming that harm should be an opportunity to transform people and to value them and to take care of them, not to throw them away, which is exactly what we see when we see more police being brought into schools and added into schools. So I think those are a lot of the root causes, seeing folks struggling to pay their rent, pay for groceries, pay for mental health. We see all of those showing up in places like in schools.
Thank you, you all. So the next question is for Shelton and again, Adriana. What are the narratives? What narratives do you need to combat about young people in black communities in general. And whichever one wants to go first.
I can go. What comes to mind for that question? What do we need to combat for young people? Because that's what I work with mostly. In schools, they always talk about an achievement gap, achievement like black kids or kids of color can achieve. My argument is a receivement gap. Those who receive can achieve. So because some of our kids look different, they get treated different, and that's my job. I like to show them the beauty of who they are as young black kids. So a lot of them they don't realize their strength and who they are because their environments reflect negative connotations, and a lot of them don't know how to use their environment to their good. So not understanding what comes from some of those environments, like um, resilience, strength, faith, patience, love, unity. So a lot of the outside people, they just see a lot of negative things or the things they point out. But when you become uh, entrenched in those communities, the feeling like it's all love. It's all love. So I think it's a misunderstanding based on a lot of perceptions based on selfish, on nothing. I'm gonna just be honest, based on nothing, because a lot of them haven't even been in those environments to know what's going on. And two, I think the emotional awareness of our young kids and adults in some of those communities. I think a lot of people don't feel like that we're emotionally aware, but a lot of times we don't know how to articulate those emotions. But they're definitely like we strive off feelings because we can look at something like, nah, that don't feel right. So we're very emotionally aware, but the articulation of our feelings, I think sometimes that's misconstrued. And the ability for a child, especially a child of color, to read people. I work in schools, and a lot of educators, they don't. It's almost like they're surprised when I can relay a message of how the child feels about them, but then it's almost a pushback, like it's no. So, and I like to always return to that child, like, yes, what you've seen is right, what you felt is right, but their perception is wrong. It has nothing to do with you. And I would also say, a lot of the stigmas about the community is that we don't care about our kids. I would definitely fight that, because once you walk in these communities, you find out the neighbor is watching the other neighbor's kids and they have no family relation. We got a lot of fictive kin, but that's because of I think, in my opinion, we hold so much love and hope, and just we want to be supported and be as a collective, and our strength as a collective that a lot of people don't understand. So achievement gap, emotional awareness versus articulation, and no hope. A lot of people think our communities don't have any hope because of what they see, not understanding what we think and what we feel and how we use those environments to get to that next level. It may not look like it in the moment, but it's always those stories. She made it out of this. She made it out of that. Are these bad environments? No, that's what was used to get to where we need to go. So, in my opinion, like, it's just a whole misconception of the principles of the communities that we live in and how people see us. Thank you.
Well, leaning off what you said, I feel like teachers come into these communities with the idea of, I'm just a teacher and these are students and they're just supposed to learn, they're learners. But when you put that label on students and you realize, like, school, like, there's people that come to school because they need a place to get away from home, and there's people that go to school because they want to learn or they want to do something to where they go to college. But there's also kids who feel like they're in school just because they are required to get it done. And I feel like teachers come into these schools with this idea of they're going to teach to their students and their students are supposed to respect them, but they don't be knowing how to respect these students. Like, if you're coming into an environment full of like black and brown youth, you should do your research on, like, how to communicate with these type of students, because at the end of the day, a lot of people go through a lot of stuff. And I feel like they put labels on students, like they're angry or like they don't listen or they're bad or they always fighting or they disrespectful. But we all raised to, like, if somebody's disrespecting you, don't take that, rather it's from an adult or it's from somebody else. Speaking your opinion and verbalizing that you don't like an adult for the way that they talk to you or for the way that they treat you is not wrong. And I feel like a lot of teachers put that label on students that they're disrespectful when they're not even disrespectful. It's just you don't understand that student because, like I said, teachers need to do their research on the areas that they're coming to. How you come into a school full of black students that got shootings going on outside of their school and you know nothing about it until you get into the building or until a student tells you that their friend just got shot and you don't know what to say because you're not used to stuff that goes on in this neighborhood because you're not from here. You're driving hours away from your white hometown and you're coming to work and that's all you're doing. And I feel like that's why kids get so many labels that they're angry and they're and all this other stuff because teachers don't understand what goes on in those kids' neighborhoods. They don't think like, damn, if I call the police to up to this school, this student might have to deal with what goes on outside of the school and how he got all these different citations from the police or then got locked up before or this could affect him in some type of way. Like they don't ever think about what goes on in those students' lives. So I guess it's a lot of stuff that needs to be changed, like with the labels on students and how they view us. Because going to being in high school for me, it was like I witnessed a lot of stuff, and I feel like it needs to be changed. But it starts with the teachers knowing who their students are and actually trying to learn the environment that these students are in and what they go through outside of school because it affects the students as a whole and it makes this space full of angry empty students who ain't got nothing to lose or feel like they got to prove a point in a space where you know they have to prove a point because they're looked at as people that are angry or people that are mad or people that are disrespectful. So they either be what they're labeled as or try to show you that they're not that. And some kids just aren't at the level where they can, because they don't have people there for them that can like show them that they're more than what they're labeled as.
Okay, thank you, Adriana and Chilton. I'm gonna open the space for you all to answer the question, but I'll give y'all about 2 minutes each if y'all want to. Any responses to the last question?
I can add something really quickly, if that's okay.
Yes, go ahead.
I just wanted to add to a lot of the really important pieces that were just shared around like labels that young people have to navigate and deal with. I think one of the biggest and probably one of the most harmful, while we're on the topic of like harms that young people experience, one of the most harmful narratives that I feel like there is a constant struggle to push back on in organizing young people to have safe schools, sanctuary.
Sadia, you cut out a little bit.
Oh no, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I was just saying to the previous point that was shared, there's this huge national narrative that I feel like we often see in a lot of conservative, right-wing, fascist conversations.
You cut out again, Sadia.
My camera. Does that help?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right, third time. Ooh, the devil is working hard today. I just wanted to add that I feel like there's a huge fight in pushing back on the narrative of young people being hyper violent and just the hyper demonizing of young people as if the worst story that we see about an incident of violence about young people then becoming the only image of what young people are. It reminds me so much now of like the late 90s when Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton, that administration of the super predator narrative of Black and brown youth being dangerous, being monstrous, being like non-human as a way for them to push bills ultimately just to expand the funding for policing and surveillance. And I think so much of that cycle is coming back now today, where we see so many acts of so many narratives and stories that put labels and stereotype young people And yet we don't question, why is it acceptable when we see police killing young people, sexually assaulting young people, brutalizing them in schools, disappearing them in jails and prisons. And we as a society accept that form of violence and then question how we see young people interacting with that narrative, that they're not worthy of protection, of love. And I just wanted to offer that. I think a lot of that was touched on earlier, that we see that narrative constantly in our mainstream media outlets or in conversations. And so much of what we see of young people is actually much more brilliant, much more beautiful, grounded in community organizing, grounded in transformative justice, grounded in healing. And I just wish more of those narratives, right? That's our work, to uplift those narratives more.
I think what each one of y'all, excuse me, has said was very beautiful. I think, youth want to be supported, but in the way that they express it, a lot of people don't understand the way that we all understand it. But okay, the next question is for Joyce and Adriana. Adriana, I'm gonna have you answer first. The question is, how can adults better support young people in schools and in our communities?
Ooh, that's a good question. I could go 100 bars about this. Um, Let me start with saying I feel like adults could support students. Well, it starts young, first of all. Like, I know, like, parents go through a lot, or they have other stuff going on, and they expect teachers to handle whatever goes on at school. But it also stems from home. Like, with, I know parents can't always be there for be there for the students, but I feel like if parents get more involved into, like, what goes on inside of schools, and maybe understood, like, the school board system more, then they would, like, pay attention. But it's like, they're not taught about what goes on in their neighborhoods, or they're not taught about what goes on inside their schools, or, like, sent emails about the school board meetings and what the school boards are talking about. But they gonna send you an email about your son being bad and stuff like this. But it's like they pick and choose what they want to tell these parents about. And I feel like getting parents involved is, like, a big priority. And I say another thing for adults, I feel like teachers need to start speaking up and actually supporting their students. And to do that, they would need to, like, I'm trying to put my words in a way because I got, like, a lot going on in my mind. But I feel like overall, like, adults just need to support students and actually, like, ask them what's going on in their lives, because a lot of students come to school to get away from what goes on at home. So it's like, I can't talk to my mom about what I'm going through, or I can't confide in my dad because he might not be around. It's like a lot of stuff that Black and brown youth go through that they can't express inside of schools. So they, like, channel their anger, or they suppress themselves. So I just feel like teachers need to start creating spaces for students, especially students of color, and supporting them more, and holding more, like, restorative circles, and just talking about things with these students, because that's the main thing they need, is, like, support, and to know that they can trust you. And I just feel like adults aren't giving that much attention to the students. Like, they talk about Black Lives Matter, and they talk about having, like, like, they did this whole little year when it was Black Lives Everything, and being so pro Black people and loving it Black people, and having conversations with them, and trying to build spaces for them, to it just being like next year just being horrible. And it's just like, they don't adults really just need to do better with that overall, because it just, yeah.
Okay. So when I look at this question, how can adults better support young people in schools and communities? one of the first things I think about is a lot of adults need resources. A lot of parents that are living in poverty, they love their kids. A lot of women that I deal with talk about how can they deal with their children or help their teenagers through their struggles, but there's not enough resources for them to even, or tools to use to learn how to deal with their teens or kids, or young people. Another thing is that education, right? I think a lot of parents can be punitive, um, especially if they're experiencing violence themselves. It's like a cycle that happens over and over again, right? Like, if you're getting hit, like you hit your kid for not listening, and then they in turn hit, right? But getting the education to the parents on how to be more transformative with their kids, I think will help solve a lot of these problems. But the resources just aren't there. I know our organization teaches that to our people, but that's about it, right? Like a lot of parents don't know about that. I didn't know what transformative was. I didn't even know what punitive was. And so getting that education out to the parents and adults would be very important. Um, Educating the parents on giving the child space, letting them speak up, or come up with solutions to their own problems. Because a lot of times we think we want stuff to be a certain way for our kids, and we think it's done out of love, right? Like we want them to be safe and we want them to like do certain things, but not actually giving them the opportunity to tell us what they actually want and what they actually need. Because I feel like a lot of times they actually have a lot of the answers to their own problems. And they can tell you what support they need, just like for Black women, right? Like we can speak up and say what support we need, but that's not what we're getting from the government, right? It's always we're looked at as being aggressive, or we deserve to be treated a certain way and things like that. When honestly we just need help and support. I think with the kids too, like I think they just need more programming. Like for instance, where this girl where she was killed, I live in that community. I have teenagers. I have 7 kids. I have 2 teenage girls. This summer there was nothing for them to do. They did have like the food carts come out, but I don't think that's what the kids asked for. I mean, they had nothing to do, and so a lot of times they slept all day, and I think that's important. Like ask them, what do y'all want? What is it that y'all want in the community? I think adults kind of take over a lot of the decision making all of the time, and we need to have our youth be brought into these conversations, and actually have more youth leaders, right? Because they can be leaders too.
Thank you all both. That's actually one of my favorite questions, is always, and I think because adults want to, or parents want to come in and want to learn more about their child, but there's not a lot of resources or understanding um, on how to support a youth, especially Black youth, properly and respectfully, and also, like Joyce said, letting them lead. And so here we do a lot of shifting the narrative and the power to the youth, and trying to be that healthy adult that they can see, and also teaching their parents or their adults that are in their lives. Did anybody else? We do have a few more minutes. Did anybody else want to respond to that question?
If I could add real quick, I think too, as a collective, we've gotten away from our roots, and that's like getting in circle. Like we are support each other because we all a part of each other, and our souls are dying to meet each other, but our egos just don't know it sometimes. So when we get in that collective with adults and kids and grandparents, like back in the day, even in African traditions, like where we come from, like that gives us that space to, number one, feel connected, be supported, feel heard, feel seen, feel appreciated, and feel valued. So I think too, we depend, nothing wrong with programming at all, but sometimes we are our own programs and we got what we need right within ourselves sometimes, but we just got to come together and allow that to happen sometimes, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I just want to add on to that, like for like the community wise, I feel like when it comes to hearing what the kids want, exactly like you said, like knowing that kids have voices and listening to what they want in their neighborhoods will really make a difference because like I feel like kids are a project of their environments. Like it might take one kid to just go to this event for the whole group to go to the event. And it's like if we have more like it's one thing to have like events, but it's another thing for like adults to actually think about it and be like, okay, I can do this, or like I just feel like the community and the government really like they need to do better with including like the youth and thinking about okay, how can we make this a better environment rather than locking kids up or putting police enforcing more police. Like it also falls on them. Like they don't think about other ways to change their neighborhoods. They just like enforce and don't give the youth a chance to like speak their mind and say what needs to change.
Yeah, I just want to piggyback off of that a little bit. It's like what I'm seeing in the neighborhood is more police presence, right? Which that doesn't make me feel safe. That doesn't make my kids feel safe. But that's what like the community I feel like is shouting to us. Is like we need more police. We got to call the police, right? So when we're doing balloon releases, the police is there, right? Or they're like just riding around the neighborhood. When what we really need to do is like give our kids the space, right, to make mistakes and to be themselves and to speak for themselves, um, and so that they can build trust with us. And once they feel like that we trust them and we're not just coming in to be like, oh, we finna teach y'all how to deal with conflict and y'all gonna deal with it this way, right? No, we're gonna let them be a part of coming up with the solution for themselves, right? Because the police, all they're going to do is lock people up. Those people are going to go to jail. They're going to miss out on very important things, connections with other people, social skills. And more than likely, they get out and continue to go back to jail. It's like a cycle, and that doesn't break the cycle. So,
Thank you all. Again, that's one of my favorite questions. But the next question is for Adriana Sadia. Um, what demands should we have of, sorry, what demands should we have of the state? So for schools, for community, local governments, etc. Adriana, would you like to go first?
Sure. So, well, first of all, I always try to like tell kids that like when I was in high school, like the young kids used to be so like angry and they used to never understand why the rules were changing, why stuff was happening so quick, and why they was coming up with these stupid rules. And I was trying to explain to them like the school district get a call about certain stuff and they tell the principal that they need to enforce some type of rules, and then the principals just come up with these stupid dumb rules that they think are gonna fix how the kids behavior is or whatever. Like not letting the kids leave the classroom if they're always in the hallways, or starting to call parents, or eventually suspending students if they're still in the hallways, and that's like a continuing issue. And it stems from there. I just feel like, can you restate the question because I just lost my train of thought.
Yeah, it's okay. What demands should we have for the state and for the state? So schools, community, local governments, things like that. And so think of our police-free schools demands that we had for the school board. And so think about around policing that they have in our communities for schools, any like response to um, any type of violence. What demands do you think they should have instead of the police? Like what kind of,
Oh
I
well,
said that wrong.
what were you gonna say?
No, just think of some. What do you think we should implement um, for the school communities and the police
Okay.
to change the narrative.
So like for schooling, like when I was in high school, I used to always ask if we could like I used to always talk to them about ways that we can make a change inside of the school, because they would ask me like they would come to me and ask me because they know like I'm very verbal, and they would like just come to me for my opinion about like ways to make a change within the school, and I would tell them like instead of enforcing this, you need to, because they would get so angry that kids would be in a common area or not in their classrooms, and I used to tell them like instead of being angry at the students, y'all need to build a space where they can be comfortable enough to do their work. So I feel like the school board system, they're not coming up to these schools, they're not asking these students, why aren't you going to class? They're just looking at a piece of paper and looking at statistics and looking at how good the school needs to look, so they're basing it off that, and they're not caring about what's going on in the school. They're just enforcing. So I say instead of them enforcing so much rules on these students in schools, they need to ask the students what they want and help them create a space where they feel comfortable enough to go do their work in common areas around the school. And just if they don't want to be in that classroom or they're feeling a certain way with their teacher, obviously, help them get through that, because some students get to a point where they just can't learn in that space and they're not comfortable. And I feel like instead of the student getting in trouble or eventually getting suspended because they argued or disrespected the teacher, they should be creating spaces for students. So that's a big one for me. And like restorative justice is another one. Instead of because they keep locking kids up, but like while they're locked up, what are they learning? What are y'all doing for these kids that are benefiting them or making them want to be different in their lives? Like instead of just locking the kids up, they need to have time to actually think about what they've done and like go and like have a chance to like learn from what they've done, because they get locked up and they get told what they did wrong, but they don't get told what they need to do to be a better person. They just get told what they did wrong, and they already in this mindset where they know what the hell they doing wrong. They already know what they're doing wrong if they didn't been there 3 times, 2 times, whatever. And it just gets to a point where they try to hang them because they give them chances. And that's the thing, like they give them these chances or slap them on the wrist and make them think like, oh, I can do it again. And that's what they want them to think, like you can do it again. So these kids just, they're young, and it's like, I don't know, it's just a lot of stuff that needs to be changed. And I feel like it starts with the government, and it starts with the schools, the school system.
Sabi?
All right, this is a great question. I'm going to go off camera just because I'm paranoid about the devil or the feds or whoever's listening that doesn't want me to be seen and heard. This is a really great question, though. I think in terms of what demands, I think we've seen from a lot of different organizations, youth orgs, in terms of what young people want to see from their schools, communities, local governments. I mean, I think there's a lot of different things. I think one of the biggest demands that feels like a really important starting point is for there to be really clear demands within school districts of ending any sort of contracts or relationships that involve policing and surveillance and ICE. I think we have seen just through a lot of data, a lot of stories, a lot of narratives, also understanding how police initially came into our communities was really to stop and control movement building, right? When we look at the 60s and we see student organizing to desegregate education, we have a lot of the content and the information that's already been shared tonight that we know policing and surveillance have not made our communities feel safer. We've seen live examples of recent unfortunate gun shootings that have happened, mass shootings in schools, where police not only didn't go in to react or to end or disarm an act of mass violence, but actively chose to run away from that situation, right? When we look at Uvalde's, when we look at what happened with the Parkland school shooting, right? We've seen constant instances that have proven to us time and time again that we don't need police or surveillance in schools, but yet their budgets keep going up while public schools are being defunded. So I think one of the biggest demands that often come from young people that have already been echoed tonight is that we don't need police surveillance or any other forms of criminalizing, harming, brutalizing young people. I think that's one of the biggest demands that we see across the board in terms of how do we protect and center Black youth, Black sanctuary, and what it means to be in an environment where you feel like your needs are being met, right? When your schools are providing the kind of safety, the kind of accountability, the kind of protection that you deserve. I think that's one of the biggest demands. I think another demand is this piece that's been largely going around: what does community control over schools and decision making look like? I know that's been talked about before, and I think for many years, many communities have organized for transparency, for accountability, for access to decisions that are being made. And I think another largely growing demand is thinking about what does it mean to actually, for a community and for young people to have control over schools and decision making? What does it mean when young people can say, hey, we actually want to see the budget, and we demand seeing the budget and understanding how much money is being spent on things in our school systems that we feel should be changed, right? What does it mean when there's libraries and curriculum, counselors that are funded rather than policing? What does it mean when there are structures in place, when there's community oversight committees, when there are roles where community members, elders, young people can actively say, this is what we want, this is what we want funded, and just seeing that that actually translates to building and holding power over schools is another big demand. We organizing project in Oakland, right? The George Floyd resolution after a huge international, right, moment of communities looking at what happened to him, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, and all the decades worth of state violence impacting young people and adults, right? That was a moment where folks looked and said, hey, what does it actually look like for us to not only remove police from our communities, but also to fill those places with our community members that can go inside of schools and keep them safe instead. I think some other things to think about too: restorative justice and transformative justice were mentioned. I think that's been a big, growing, large demand of having practices that create schools as environments where we can shift culture and shift harms that happen through conversation, through circles, through guidelines, through community agreements, through plans together of how we address things, and provide space for healing and for nourishment. And then another demand that I'll just say, I'm sorry, I have a laundry list, as we should demand everything, right, is also thinking about what does mental health and wellness resources look like.
Sadia, you're around 30 seconds.
Oh, thank you. Abolitionist mental health and wellness. We can have resources that center people's mental health support, counseling support, meditation, but without policing being present or involved would be the last demand.
Thank you. Oh, there go the timer. Okay, so that was the end of our questions. Oh no, Adriana did answer. Okay. So I'm gonna pass it back to you, Sadia, to share an event that's going on soon.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Shira, and to this amazing team. I'll just quickly plug. I'm going to sadly go off camera to protect being heard. But what's really exciting to announce is that AP Advancement Project, where myself and other amazing folks are at, doing this work with you all, with Freedom Inc. and other orgs, are going to be hosting a conversation on Wednesday of this week called Safe Not Sexualized. It's about thinking about the year's worth of information and stories that we, along with other amazing groups, Alliance for Educational Justice, National Women's Law Center, In Our Names Network, SPLC, and Interrupting Criminalization, have been looking at the ways that Black girls and gender expansive folks have also been dealing with harms from school police sexual violence, and thinking about the data that has been existing and collected to look at how those experiences have happened, and also just seeing the ways that young folks constantly are having their dignities and their bodies violated by police. Just exploring why it's so critical for us to center the needs of young people and to challenge the way that policing shows up in our schools and to remove it fully. So it'll be great. It's Wednesday, October 18th from 6 to 9 p.m. It'll be moderated by Tarana Burke from the Me Too movement and also Andrea Ritchie. So really excited, and just wanted to plug that for folks who can hopefully attend.
Thank you, Sadia. Give me one second. Okay, so next we wanted to talk a little bit about the week of action. So the week of action is next week, the National Week of Action. We've been following with Dignity in Schools for a couple of years now. This week of action is between October 16th through the 24th. Yes, the 24th. So keep a lookout for some posts that we'll have. We're also gonna be putting up a video of what we did in the summer. So keep a lookout for that. Next, we're gonna drop down a GoFundMe for Kaisha. We want to make sure that her family is being supported in this time. So that should be dropped there as well. Also, I've seen some questions in the comments. Unfortunately, we don't have a lot of time right now, but that should be answered in the next couple of minutes or within the end of today. We'll respond to you all. But thank you all. Thank you to the panelists. Thank you to the young folks that have been continuing the work. Thank you all for continuing the work too. So yeah, thank you all.